So you're gearing up for a senior .NET role? You already know the interview is going to go way beyond just basic syntax. Well, in the next few minutes, we're going to break down the core concepts that really separate a good developer from a great one. Let's get you ready to absolutely nail that interview.
Okay, let's dive right in with the classic. What is the real difference between iHost Builder and iApplication Builder? Now, this isn't just some random trivia question. This question gets right to the heart of how an ASP.NET Core app even comes to life. And believe me, it sets the tone for the entire technical chat.
Hey, if you had to pause and think about that one for a second, don't even worry about it. That's exactly why we're here. We're going to break these core ideas down so you can walk into your next interview feeling confident, ready to explain not just the what, but more importantly, the why. So here's our game plan. First, we'll master the core pipeline. Then we'll get into architecting for performance, talk about making those critical design choices, and we'll wrap it all up with a final takeaway that you can bring with you. All right, let's start with the core pipeline. Seriously, understanding how a request travels through your application from the very moment it hits your server until you send a response back is completely non-negotiable for any senior role.
And at the very heart of that pipeline is middleware. You know, this assembly line analogy, it's perfect. Each piece of middleware is like a station that gets to inspect, maybe modify, or just pass a request along to the next stop. For instance, one piece might handle authentication, and the next one handles logging. And the order is absolutely critical here. I mean, you'd always put authentication before authorization, right? It's a super powerful and flexible system.
So let's circle back to that very first question, because this makes the difference crystal clear. Think of the iHost Builder as the architect who builds the house. It sets up all the foundational stuff, configuration, logging, dependency injection. Then the iApplication Builder comes in to furnish the house. It defines that middleware pipeline that decides exactly how your app is going to handle incoming traffic. So one builds the host, the other builds the request pipeline. Simple as that.
Now, building on that foundation, let's talk about dependency injection, a topic you are pretty much guaranteed to be asked about. The most crucial point to get across is that DI is all about decoupling your code. So instead of a class creating its own dependencies, they get injected from the outside. This is what makes your code so much more modular, flexible, and way, way easier to test.
And of course, when you talk about DI, you have to talk about service lifetimes. This table right here is your cheat sheet. Transient services, think of them as cheap and cheerful. You get a brand new one every single time you ask. Scoped services live for the life of a single web request, which is perfect for something like a database context. And singleton services, well, they're in it for the long haul, created just once and shared by everyone. That's ideal for a logging service or some app-wide configuration. Knowing which one to use and when is a huge sign of an experienced developer. All right, time to level up. You see, senior developers don't just write code that works, they write code that performs. This next part is all about building applications that are fast, responsive, and can handle some serious load. First up, async/await. This isn't just about making your UI feel snappy. In a web app, the real magic here is scalability. When you await an I/O operation, like calling a database or an API, you actually release the thread to go and serve other requests. That means your app can handle way more concurrent users with the exact same hardware. It is a massive, massive win for performance. Next, let's talk about the garbage collector. Yeah, of course, it's automatic, but a senior developer needs to understand its impact. For example, if you create a ton of short-lived objects in a really tight loop, you can put a lot of pressure on the GC, triggering frequent, expensive collections that literally pause your application. The key takeaway for an interview is that you write GC-friendly code by being mindful of your memory allocations. This slide lays out a perfect, systematic way to talk about caching, another favorite interview topic. I'd frame my answer using these 3 steps. First, you identify the bottleneck. What data is really slow to get but doesn't change very often? Second, you choose your strategy. Is a simple in-memory cache good enough, or do you need a distributed cache like Redis for a bigger application? And finally, you implement it, using .NET's built-in tools like iMemory Cache or iDistributed Cache. This shows you don't just write code, you actually think and strategize. Okay, on to our final technical section. This is where you really get to show off your architectural thinking. These kinds of questions aren't about a single right or wrong answer. They're about explaining the trade-offs and being able to justify your decisions. A classic design choice, NVC versus Razor Pages. Your answer should be all about the trade-offs. MVC, with its strict separation of concerns, is fantastic for really big, complex applications. Think a large e-commerce site. But then you have Razor Pages, which groups the logic and the view together. That makes it way simpler and more productive for things that are very page-focused, like a user profile page or a bunch of settings forms. The key is to show that you get it's not about which one is better, but which is the right tool for that specific job. Here's another one that trips people up. Let's clear this up. Kestrel is the lightning-fast web server that actually runs your .NET code. It's the engine. But in a production Windows environment, you almost always run it behind what's called a reverse proxy like IIS. IIS handles all the heavy lifting, managing security certificates, port binding, all that enterprise stuff, and then it just forwards the clean requests onto Kestrel. They work together as a really powerful team.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground. Let's bring it all home now for what might be the most important part of your interview prep.
Think of this as your final interview toolkit. Before you walk into that room, just ask yourself, can I clearly explain the core request pipeline? Can I have an intelligent conversation about performance strategies like async and caching? And can I justify my architectural design choices? If you can confidently say yes to these three things, you're in great shape. I want to leave you with this final and I think crucial thought. An interview question is rarely just about the what. When an interviewer asks you about DI lifetimes, they're not checking if you memorized a table. They're really asking if you understand how to manage application resources effectively. Always, always think about the why behind the question. If you understand the underlying problem they're trying to get at, you won't just answer the question, you'll lead the conversation. Good luck.